real way to look at practice.
So I might just go. Okay. So I'm Melissa, and I work at Qatar University College of Law in Doha, Qatar. So today we were going to split it up, and we were going to kind of do how culture impacts pedagogies, and I was going to do the external for anyone wanting to do a Fulbright or go abroad, and Stephanie was going to do the internal, and now I think you just get me. So, if you are going to develop something abroad, if you are ever interested in this kind of stuff, I would say culture is the most important consideration you need to consider when you are developing your pedagogy. You cannot cut and paste something from the United States. It just won't work in most places. I've been there about 7 years. I've seen so many people come through with grants of various kinds, and I see them banging their heads against the wall because they don't understand why this isn't working. This works so well back home. Why won't this work here? So what you really need to figure out first in the beginning is what is the culture. And to do this, to talk about Qatar, to understand the culture of the law school, the culture of the legal profession, you actually have to understand the culture and the history of the country. So Qatar's legal profession and its history is, of its judicial history is quite modern. It's not a new civilization. Qatar is an ancient civilization. The whole region, they've been doing carbon dating of ancient Dilmun pottery. They found that it dates back to 6,000 BC. There have been people living there since 6,000 BC. A little bit about the modern history. In 1868, the tribes in Bahrain and the tribes in Qatar were fighting over who owns this land. A British general decided to come in and get in the middle of the conflict, and he said that this belongs to, and he chose the Al Thani, and said that this Qatar is now going to be ruled by this Al Thani, okay? After that, the Ottomans came in, they took over, and it was all under Ottoman control. It was a feudal state. The Qataris overthrew the Ottomans in the Battle of Wajra in 1893, and after the Ottomans left, then the Brits came back. In 1916, they signed an agreement, the ruler of Qatar signed an agreement with the Brits, and it was what served later as giving Qatar protectorate status. Qatar was not a colony of the British, but it was a protectorate. The collapse of the pearl industry happened during World War I in the 1920s, and basically the Qatari population was almost wiped out. So why I think this is important is if you look, the double ALS was founded in 1900, right? Out here, the American Association of Law Schools was founded. Back then, in Qatar, we're still having fights over who's in control of the country. So you can't judge the system now based, anyway. So when the pearl industry collapsed, this started the years of hunger. Between 1920 and the 1940s, the population of the Qatari Peninsula dropped to 10,000 people. A significant amount of locals fled to Bahrain, where they had ancestral land, or Saudi, or one of the regions, because people had to leave to survive. By 1940, the population of Qatar was estimated to contain about 16,000 residents, but the British political resident described Doha as, quote, little more than a miserable fishing village straggling across the coast for several miles and more than half in ruins. The oil discovery in 1939 did start to change, but the Brits didn't completely come back until 1947 to start actually getting the oil out of the ground. It wasn't until 1949 that the first oil was exported out of Qatar, and that is when modern development actually began in Qatar. The agreement that they signed, because remember we're having the years of hunger, so the British came back with OPEC, the big oil company. The Qataris signed an agreement because they were starving that was not necessarily the most lucrative agreement for the Qatari people. Part of what happened was the British said that they absolutely did not want British subjects or non-Muslim foreigners to be tried by the sheikh or the shara courts, which was the local tradition. That agreement is what started our entrance into the common law. The fact that the oil company said all British subjects and all non-Muslim residents should be tried under the British government's courts. So the British set up their own courts. Once this all started happening, by 1951, a British doctor with staff arrived. He created the first hospital. In 1952, this is when we first started having non-Quranic schooling for boys. That's our first modern school for boys. In 1953, telephone exchange opened up. 1954, we got a desalination plant. And it wasn't until 1955 that the first formal school for girls opened. But it wasn't popular. We're still talking primary school. By 1957, they got a power plant. And by the end of the 1950s, Qatar had already established an army, a police system, and in addition to the British courts, they had another commercial court and a civil court that met weekly and consisted of Ali bin Abdullah, the ruler of Qatar, and his son Ahmed. In 1961, that is when Qatar's first preparatory level school for girls opened with the full support of the Ministry of Education. After the British Protectorate status ended, the Adliya Court, which was a civil and commercial court, replaced the British system. So now we have the Shara courts, and then we also still have a state-run commercial court. Qatar University, Qatar's first secondary school, it opened simultaneously for men and women in the form of a college education. And I'm so sorry, I just said, here's what Qatar University looks like. Qatar University opened in 1973. Initially, the school offered two distinct colleges for education, one for men and one for women. Of the original 157 students enrolled in 1973, 103 were women. A Miri decree officially established Qatar University as a public university in 1977, and formal undergraduate legal education officially began in 1993 with the establishment of Sharia. It's important to know that the word for law in Arabic is Sharia. That's what that means. By 2003, Qatar University had 6 colleges and enrolled about 8,600 students, of whom 73% were women. And a College of Law, autonomous from the College of Sharia and Islamic Studies, began operations in 2004 and was formally created in 2006. By 2015, our College of Law enrolled 1,375 undergraduate students, of whom 62% are female. And by this fall semester that we just had, the College of Law enrolled 557 male undergraduate students, 88% of them being Qatari, 42 male LLM students, as well as 1,111 female undergrad students, 86% of them Qatari, and 63 female LLM students. So we've grown significantly. So I'm trying to give the history because you need to understand that everything is in context. The modern development, the legal system, formal legal education, we're talking 1993. It's the first time that we have formal legal education. And we're talking 2004 when legal education, apart from religious education, a religious legal education is starting to be offered and made actually consistent. Qatar's culture regarding how they identify themselves is very different than the United States. And this does impact all political pedagogies. In Qatar, despite enormous economic changes, Qataris are still grouped according to lineage or tribe. You self-identify by your tribes and your heritage, and your kabila or your tribe or family remains the fundamental determinant of an individual's social position and your future. So you need to think about it, because here in the United States, as one historian has talked about, in the States you witness the erasure of non-work-related identity, because we are post-industrial USA. So what you do in the States is who you are. One of the first questions most acquaintances ask you in the States is, what do you do? Where do you work? This appears to Americans as the most reliable way of knowing somebody. But in Qatar and in many other cultures, what you are, that is who you are in terms of inherited relations with others, is significantly more important than what you do. It's even reflected in the names. So somebody's name is going to be Muhammad bin Dad, Khalifa bin Ahmed bin. So who your dad is, who your grandpa is, who your great-grandfather is, will actually talk about you significantly more than I'm a law student and I went to wherever. That's not important, okay? So we're dealing with completely different, where here in the West we take for granted that of course all these students are going to be thinking about what law school they went to and where they clerked for the summer. That's not the determinant of what drives students to choose their internships or to choose a field placement or to even pursue a career in law. Also, what's important is tribal lineages are so important that it is how most people used to, and I would argue still do, find work. So, and that some employers will refuse to work with other students because of tribe, because of who their history is. So I have had it where there are certain ministries that you look at the last names and you know that it is pretty much one tribe that dominates that ministry. If you are from, now when I say tribe, I'm talking thousands of people, right? It's not like, it's not like a family of 10. I'm talking about a huge, giant, population of 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 people. Maybe some of them are a little bit smaller. So it's a large sample of people. But it's important. Everybody really does know this. I've had field placements tell me that they will only take students from this last name, or from this extent, even a smaller last name, this smaller tribe within this last name. That matters. I've had students go work at a British law firm, and then like an international law firm, and then they've been sent back to me because that law firm's biggest client is a family business. And when the family business found out that they had an intern, they immediately asked, what's the last name, who is that kid? And when they found out that kid was not from their family, they said, we can't take him this semester, I'm sorry, that would interfere with this. So our conflict checks are slightly different. But this is, the thing is you want to be Western about it, but this is the way it works. This is where I live, this is real, and this is how everyone identifies. So you can't dismiss it. You need to build your pedagogy around this, and you want them to be successful, so you want to actually support them in the best way you can. So another thing that's different from the States, and why you can't necessarily cut and paste, is women's role in society. It's different than the States. So I have a quote here from another historian. Qatar is still a conservative society, to be sure, and the issue of women working remains sensitive, especially among a minority, and I will add, a vocal minority, but it is a minority, both men and women, that is resistant to change. Those who object to women working usually give several reasons. One relates to Sharia or Islamic law. In one way or another, working women have to deal with men, something that in this view is forbidden, haram. People who adopt such a view feel that a woman's place is in the home, raising children and caring for the family. A second reason for opposition to working women is encompassed in the word aib, shame, and Nora will tell me if I'm saying that word terribly, a concept springing from tribal values. Among family with financial means, men are supposed to be the breadwinners, not women. While such logic is rejected in modern societies, or rejected in Western societies, I would say, these issues are still debated within the GCC and Qatar in particular.
It's not the story of Bahrain.
Right, no. It's a little different, and Kuwait also is different, But in Qatar, I have students who will come and their mother-in-law or father-in-law will choose their schedules for them, what classes they can sign up for. I had, when I first started my program, I had to warn all the attorneys that dads and brothers were going to come sit with my students for the first 6 weeks of the internship in the same room. They're just testing to make sure that this is okay. The thing is they're your family honor. In a society this small, and in a society this tribal, your honor, your reputation, what people gossip about you, is so important that you don't want to do anything that could cause other people to talk about you in a bad way. So most law placements are mixed gender. This means I have a huge problem selling mixed gender placements. Yeah? So it's different. So about externship. So here is just some pictures of where I work. Everything, we have 2 separate campuses, a female campus and a male campus, and professors are allowed to go and traverse between the 2, but students are not. So here are just some pictures from my world. So I arrived in the scene as a trailing spouse in 2011. I was a juvenile dependency attorney in San Francisco, and then we moved to Paris, and I worked in a corporate law firm, and when I got to Qatar, I'm like, please don't make me work in a corporate law firm anymore. I don't want to do it. So I was just not sure what I wanted to do. There was a woman in Qatar who had won money from maybe the State Department or a fellowship of some kind, and she was out there doing a women's mentorship program. I started volunteering with her, and through her, I was introduced to the dean of the school, and I found out that they had 0 practical skills of any kind, 0 experiential education in 2011. Everything is based on like the old school Egyptian, because most of our professors are from Egypt, Jordan, and a couple from Tunisia. So it's pretty much, I would argue, mostly Egyptian too. They stand, they lecture, you memorize, you spit it back. It's not practical, it's not critical thinking, it's very, very old school. So when I get there and I start talking to the dean, I'm like, I'm coming from San Francisco, this does not compute. So I offered to create something for them. So I basically worked for free about 6 months and copied all of you guys, everything that I could find about anyone that had ever written about externships in my life. I was reading about it, trying to copy and find out what can I do out here. And I came up with this. And then I have to say that this has changed significantly. Every single semester I have to adapt and I have to change because I will have some new experience with something that I learned and I realize I have to do it differently next semester. So it's kind of the same as you guys. We've got the in-class and the out-of-class, and we do all of the same stuff, timesheets. The difference is that I have to focus a lot more on CVs and professionalism skills than probably you guys would ever imagine. Because you have older students that have had to work before and have had to make a CV before and know that they're going to have to get jobs to support their families. I don't. I have students that always were going to go work for their families, and they're like, what's a CV? Why do I need this? What's a cover letter? So this is a real CV that I got. I've even gotten better than this before, but you know what, I didn't scan them. This is a real CV, and then this is a CV after we've had a significant amount of counseling sessions pre-semester. Because I can't even place them because I need to work with them pre-semester to even explain basically why we need jobs and everything that goes with getting a job. Not why we need jobs, but just it's different. The mentality is different. And you also have to remember that in the state of Qatar, I'm sure you've seen it in the news, it's the 2nd highest GDP in the entire world. Gas revenues are super high. The country's buying lots and lots of stuff. You know, there's a lot of money. And it's a lot of fast money. So the whole, and Qataris do not, so the state of Qatar has a population of about 2.7 million people. 12% have Qatari citizenship. Of 2.7 million, 12% are actual Qataris. And so the state is very rich, and it gives them a lot of subsidies and a lot of benefits. They do not need to pay for education. They do not pay for electricity. They do not pay for health. They do not pay for education. They do not pay for water. They get a lot. They get a lot of social protection. So again, when you're talking, and we also have Qatarization laws. These are laws that literally say in our labor law, you must hire a Qatari first, and if you can't find a Qatari, then next, and then next, and then next, and then next. And they do, I think it's Qatari, then GCC, then Arab, then Muslim, then us, then not us, but then me, then I know I'm the woman, the American. I'm not high up on that labor law. So you just need to know this. So you need to know that when I started an externship program, it's not like they're like, yay! No, it was like, my daughter's not taking your class. Who are you? No way, what? No, my daughter is not going and working with men in a law firm. So I had to go out and physically build this thing. And also where I started to work, my school was very developing, let's say. It started in what, 2004, 2006, I arrived in 2011. There was no system, there was no community engagement. We operated exactly like everyone says you shouldn't do, in a vacuum, with a bunch of professors who had theoretical degrees, but they all have PhDs, but they had not practiced a day in their life. And they did not communicate with local council. They did not talk to anyone out of campus. So I had to build everything. I had to build a listserv. I had to build a system for building a listserv. I had to build relationships with the entire town because I needed to beg them to take my law students. So this externship literally served as the basis of creating community relations with our town, getting the professors to understand why it's important to actually know somebody in a law firm. If you teach contracts, you should maybe talk to somebody who implements that contract or revises or deals when that contract fails. So the biggest thing that is a difference, is also I have to pre-secure all jobs, and my students compete in a vacuum. Because I have women that are not supposed to, and I will get in trouble with their families if I make them go cold call or network to try and find a job. This would be very, very bad. So I have to go out to everyone in the community, get them to sign agreements with me that they promise me for fall semester they'll take 2 students and the requirements are Qatari citizen, female, 3.0 GPA. And I have to create a big data, like a big Excel spreadsheet. And then I have to get enough jobs for all the students in my class and more. And then what I do at the same time that I'm securing all the jobs, I'm working on the students to do counseling on why you need a CV, how to do interviews. And then I let them compete. And I basically base this on, my best friend was going to medical school at the time, and she was applying for residencies. And I stole their matching system. So I just stole it. So I did this, and I did this, and then I let them match. I put them together and I let them do real interviews, so the students, it's fake, because I've already promised to their parents that I know these people. I've seen the desk their daughter's going to sit at. I know the people that she's going to be working with. They're cool. It's good. Now I let her decide which places she wants to apply to. I send her CV off. They invite her for an interview, and they tell me, I like this one, first choice, second choice, third choice, and then we do the matching. And that's how they get jobs. I have to control the whole process. Also because some of my students are very young, they see nothing wrong with calling a prosecutor 10 times to kind of almost force them into taking them. So you have to also kind of protect your employers. Because some of the really, the ones that everybody wants, they're going to get 100 phone calls from students begging to be admitted, and they get really mad if I give out their email addresses or their phone numbers. So this kind of protects everyone. Another thing that's very different is it is not the culture in Qatar to talk about yourself, not to somebody who's not in your family. So writing a journal, about a reflection journal about what I did, what I learned, it is not, nobody does this. They won't talk about themselves. They don't want to. I knew, and I knew that you were going to be able to read it. So I'm like, I'm going to white out the student's name at least. That's like, maybe I don't need to direct. No, I do. Yes, I do. So I have to actually force them out of their shell, because if I ask them to write a reflection journal, I've tried it, they give me nothing. They don't understand the purpose of writing about themselves, they don't understand the purpose of writing about what they did, and they would actually complain that this is not allowed. They're not allowed to speak about them. They're not allowed to speak about what they did at work, and you try and talk about confidentiality, and I'm not wanting confidentiality, so we also have to do a whole lot of counseling about what you can say in a reflection journal and what I want. So I have to also translate everything into Arabic. So I have an assistant, and she's never been a secretary before, but that's all okay. She's a certified translator. That's who I need, because everything I do is translated. So here's an example of one of my reflection journals. And you'll see that still they're only writing about 1 or 2 sentences. This is an older journal from 2015-16. So I've now even had to have my teaching assistants help me write sample best answers for these questions to show them the level of reflection. And I give them my grading rubric so they can see how much detail I want out of it. Otherwise, they don't want to tell me anything, because it's a very private society. It's a very private society. So another big difference is I have tried to force them out of their shells, and I make them do a mini thesis defense, kind of. So at the end of the semester, for 30% of their grade, they have to stand in front of my dean. This is my dean and our associate deans, and a couple faculty members of the dean suggests I invite. And they have to stand up, and they have to speak about what they did in their internship for 3 minutes. And then they're open for 3 minutes of questioning. Prior to this, they have to draft me an executive summary of 1 page with bullet points about, and I have rules, like I change it every semester based on time, because I realize some, they don't make it in time. So it's about 2 laws that they worked on and like 1 experience, and they have to talk about it and what they learned from it. And then my panel gets to quiz them on anything they want, because my panel's been given the executive summary in advance. They can quiz them on their knowledge of the laws that they've said that they worked on, right? Not the laws, only the laws on the executive summary, otherwise it would be a little mean. They can quiz them on what they learned. They can ask them any question that they want. And this is to kind of build their grit. They're horrified. Nobody likes me after I started doing this, but they told me I was going to be the capstone graduation class, so I'm like, well, let's try something hard. Yeah, and actually at this point, we've been doing this for a while now. I think like 3 years I've been the capstone. And they're so proud of themselves at the end. When they survive this experience, I'll say this final presentation where they have to defend their performance in front of a giant group of people and the dean, they walk out of there so proud of themselves that it's really awesome to watch. Now, I'm not saying that I haven't had students cry and be horrified. Some of them have fainted. You know, it is I'm making undergrads do kind of a mini thesis defense. They're not like totally in love with this, but they're they build so much for them at the end. We do have homework, so 30% of my class is dedicated to the employers. And so they do go do 120 hours out off campus in an internship. And I also make them do it over 10 weeks. It's 10 weeks or 120 hours, whichever is longer. Because I discovered some seniors would save my class for the only class that they had, and then they wanted to do 120 hours in 2 weeks and essentially graduate early. So now it is 10 weeks or 120 hours, whatever is longer. I tell them that I do have to grade my class because my bosses would not let me make this pass-fail, which has actually worked out fine, although I'm the same as everyone where I have a lot of A's. If you look at my A's, there's a huge breakdown, but it's still a lot of B's, B pluses, and A's. I have had a couple students fail, and I have had some C's and D's, but you gotta really screw up something to fail. What else? So in some of our homework assignments, I replicate that informational interview assignment. So many of my students report that they don't actually know if they want to work after graduation. So I'm actually just trying to get them to be interested in, one, working to the law and considering something outside of a ministry, considering something in English. So part of that is I'm trying to make them find somebody that they don't already know, go out and do an interview just to tell me, 12 questions. I want them to practice interviewing skills, and I tie it with an interviewing lecture of all of that. But they have to go find somebody who has the job they want, interview them, and then also write a summary of that interview too, because you're trying to get them to learn summarization at the same time. It's been extremely powerful. This class has been ranked one of their favorite experiences, and the school's become so well known, and everyone's happy and they're proud, and it's been a really, really good, positive experience. Of the results, the big result that everyone likes to throw is that this is us. We had a, I have to read it. We had a huge increase in postgraduate employment. This is the College of Pharmacy, the Science and Informational Sciences, English, Education, Business, and Arts and Sciences. Look at us, just because of an externship program. I'm the only thing that changed. None of the other colleges that should know implemented an externship program of any kind. So in just 3 years, we went crazy. I've also had an explosion of law students. So I started the program with 15 employers. This is in the spring of 2012, because I started in 2011, but that was kind of like getting jobs, and then we ran live with the first students in the spring. So I had 15 employers offering 18 jobs to 12 students during academic year 11 and 12. And then in 2016 and 17, it was 106 employers offering 260 jobs to 165 students. And I haven't done my math but this semester I have 120 students. And I know we secured something like 140 jobs. It's crazy. So it's exploded. Everyone wants to be in this class, and now it's actually become the capstone, which is kind of actually now everyone has to be in the class, so it has grown. So one of the biggest results that I'm the most proud of is I was able to use a lot of this data, and I was able to win a giant big grant from the Qatar National Research Fund. It's this NPRP. We are doing a giant case study for the past 2 years. We are surveying as many legal employers as we can to find out what they're looking for in new grads. I've copied you guys. I've copied your scholarship and what you guys are doing in the States, and I'm trying to implement it out there. So we had to do, after we got an IRB approval, we did semi-structured interviews, and we've so far interviewed 40 different legal employers in Qatar. And we've asked them questions about how would you describe an ideal law student graduate, where are we lacking, what are our students missing, and now I'm in the process of compiling all of that data, and I have to publish something soon on that, so that will be done soon. At the same time, we've been looking at students. So part of what I've been doing ever since I started is I am a kind of an Excel geek and a document keeper. So I've done exit interviews, exit surveys for every single student that's taken this class, and I have more than 600 of them. And I'm logging them into Excel right now, and I am analyzing what tasks they typically do in internships. What are people asking them to do? How likely you are to get a male primary supervisor versus a female primary supervisor? In what category of legal placement? Is this judicial? What about international law firm versus Qatari law firm? And basically, we're getting all this data about what our system looks like, and we're at the same time getting data on the students about what they want. Why are they here? Why are they going to school? What are they looking for after graduation? And then probably even something I'm equally proud of. Okay, no, I have data. Sorry. So some of I've only gotten 235 logged, and I'm sorry. I was setting this conference going, I'm going to do it before the conference, otherwise I'll be embarrassed, and I didn't. 235. So, but what I can say is that 74% of my students have been female. However, 71% of my students, 72% have had a male primary supervisor, which is not shocking, right? This is a male-dominated profession, but it is good to now have data. I can divide it up and I can tell my students where sometimes mixed gender placements really matter, especially having a female primary supervisor might be the determinant of whether a student turns down an offer for an internship. I can tell them in what industry you're more likely to get a female supervisor. So if they're trying to do if we're doing career counseling and we're talking about what kind of job you want after graduation, and my student says, my family is extremely conservative, and when I graduate from here, I will never be allowed to work with men, I can say, well, let's look at a Qatari law firm, or let's look at the regulatory, because you're going to probably have to find something where you have a primary female supervisor or an all-female department. So I've also been able to find out what tasks. So there's that study by someone here who, what tasks do employers frequently report that they do in internships or at work as a lawyer. And so I see reading and writing emails as one of the two main things that lawyers do. And now I'm assessing to ask them, how often did students report reading for a specific research assignment by category of employer? And look at how scary this one is. In social welfare, frequently, only 41% of my students are saying that they read frequently. So now I've got to go back to those employers and go, what are we doing here? What are you doing during internships? I have their weekly reflection data as well, which I have my TAs helping me analyze. So we're now cross-checking all of this information as we enter the weekly reflection journals and what they report doing to see what's real and what's going on here. So I know this is a little bit geeky. Something that is very fun and that has been spun off of all of this is that we've found that there are a lack of role models in the profession. We have 2 Qatari female prosecutors. We have, I think, about 5 or 6 Qatari female judicial figures, and we have, I didn't write it down, but we only have about 150 licensed trial attorneys, and it's like 15 or 20 of them are women. So we found we need to introduce more law students to women. We need more women helping women and showing women that they can do this. So on March 22nd, when I get back, I've been desperately trying to plan, and we're planning this. Also, one of the biggest things that when you talk to the social sciences guys, when they've been studying the sociological perspectives, they say that something that they're very worried about and that the Qatari elders are worried about is there's been no postmodern introspection. So everything's developed at lightning speed, yet everyone's just all happy and they don't notice and they're not worried at all that everything's come a little too fast or there's no questioning. So everything's perfect all the time. Do you feel that there are any obstacles for women entering the law? No, you know? There are only 2 female prosecutors. Do you think women are more, do you think there's a bias against women? No. Okay. So if we can't have honest conversations about this, then what are we doing? So trying to have conferences like this is helping us, and what I've done with the panels on this, I've made sure I have 2 Qataris per panels. So right now I've got ladies mad at me because their firms have, big fancy diversity initiatives and they all want to be on a panel, but they're too American. I don't want them. I need to balance them because my panels need to be, I can have my American for my, extreme few, and then I can have my middle British person, but then I have to have some women to tell me an opposite perspective because otherwise I'm losing my audience. So this I'm really hopeful for. I'm very excited. We're doing it like next week or the week after. It's falling apart as I'm out here, but we're going to be fine. So and then something really fun, but when I've started to do all this is because you're not allowed to be an activist in Qatar, right? You'll get in trouble if you're an activist. I am an academic, but when I start to get passionate about this, and I start to talk with my students, and I start to get my TAs excited about this, my TA just went and talked to her friend at the Doha Film Institute. And her friend just said that, why don't I wanted a video, and I was getting ready to try and raise money to go fund somebody to pay for a video. This lady just got so excited that she's donating her services, and we are having a total grassroots. She's from the Doha Film Institute. This is one of my lady lawyers, and this is my teaching assistant. We are making one of the first videos on women in law in Qatar. So I know this sounds really silly to be so excited, but this represents not talking about this subject ever, ever, ever. It's taken me 7 years to even get at a point that we can secretly do this on the side, because we're educators, not activists. So, you know, so this is what's been fun about all of this, is my class is not a tradition, it is an externship. They do have to go to work, and we do the skills, and we do reflect on the skills. But I have to admit that sometimes you have to also realize that you're going to be maybe the only Western woman that many of these women will meet in their life. So I have had to cancel some lectures, and let's talk about life skills, guys, because you are also a mentor. You are also somebody that needs to kind of talk about stuff that people won't talk about there. So as an example, I had students at public prosecution, and there was a giant case where you give your cell phones, they were able to hack, some guys had a sting, and they would hack into cell phones that people were throwing out, and they were getting Snapchat videos, and they were now holding Qatari women ransom because you are not, so our students are just like every student in the entire world. We're on Snapchat and they're taking pictures of themselves all the time and selfies, okay? But the problem is in where I live, you can't be seen with full makeup in your hair and in a cute dress. That's like not good. So, but everyone does do it when you go to weddings and you're looking cute and you're going to parties. It's not a problem unless your phone gets stolen or somebody hacks into your phone. Well, the public prosecution, I found out they busted this sting, and then we found out through other people that a woman was beaten up by her husband, and he was divorcing her because he was forwarded an email of a picture of her, makeup cute, dancing at a wedding. And this is real. I had to cancel my lecture that week because I wanted to talk about Snapchat. I wanted to talk about social media. I wanted to talk about protecting yourselves. And this is the kind of conversations that sometimes it's more important than learning about how to interview somebody on that day. Because some of this, it's only gonna be you that's gonna talk about this out loud. And because I'm foreign, people can approach me because I'm not in the community. So I'm safe. They can't necessarily ask their peers or friends because their peers or friends, all it takes is one little quick gossip and the whole town is like, did you know she asked me about that? It's not good, but I am not of that community so they can talk to me about this. So also what I can say, when I first started working there, you're looking at the only female faculty. There was one other woman when I was working there, and very quickly she got in a fight with our boss and they didn't renew her contract. I've sat in faculty meetings where people, you know, it's in Arabic, and I'm listening to the translator say stuff like, women can't teach. Female students prefer male professors. And I'm like, what? I'm here. A huge thing that this externship has happened is now I'm here. And I've been there, and I've been there for 7 years, and I've been running around, and I've had 2 babies and a huge pregnant belly. And I've had all of these women come and tell me that they want to work there. And they've come. So I have had, and I've trained the most TAs, the most teaching assistants of any other faculty member there. And they're all women. I've had a couple guys. But almost all of them have been women. And my former mentee now, she actually is our assistant dean of students. She's awesome. She went on and did a master's, and she came back, and now she's my boss, one of my bosses. So like the thing is you have to consider culture, but at the same time you have to push it a little bit. You just have to, but at the same that you're considering it, you have to recognize that you can also influence it for positive stuff. You cannot make it look like you are a Westerner coming with your Western set of ideals, and you're doing something wrong, because everyone will reject you. But if you're there long enough, listening, getting involved, going little tiny steps and trying to suggest and actually trying to get them to do the work. Note that this isn't me. I just said, let's do a video. This is my TA and her friend doing this. I'm secretly, but I am not the one doing the content of this video, because that would be me dictating what I think you should do. This is them. So we can actually be grassroots activists by kind of getting them to think about things that they wouldn't have otherwise considered. So that's that. If you want. So I haven't published in the USA because I thought I'd have more an impact if I published out there, which is debatable if I did. But I did publish in the International Review of Law, a big thing, where I talk about all the different stuff that I do. And then the Middle East Insight asked me to update it and just do a quick little essay for them about only the results. So the updated results are with the Middle East Institute of the University of Singapore. And then I've paid somebody to do, I wanted my employers, I thought it would be a very powerful tool for recruitment if I had 7 questions that I asked a bunch of different employers. So I sent a camera guy out with a list of questions, and he interviewed about 10 different employers and asked them the same. And then I had their transcripts translated, and we weaved together a video of all the employers talking about how positive this experience is, and this is what I use for recruitment now. So that's that video as well. So this is Qatar, and I'm so sorry because Stephanie's not here, and I know nothing about what she was going to talk about. But if you want to ask about anything, yeah.
Have you faced any problem with the replacement places? Like they don't give any work to the students? So how did you deal with that?
Yes, so well, I cut them out because now I've cut them out. But basically, we have to first also, my students are shy, right? My students very much, and everything where I live is top down, right? So everything's top down. It goes, your boss is like a mini king of your department, so you're not taught to question or to ask for more, you are dictated. So my students will sit and wait for somebody to just give them work. And we have to have a whole lot of discussions about proactiveness, because some of it is not necessarily that the employers aren't giving work, it's that the students aren't, they're finishing something and they're just expecting somebody to come to them, and they don't realize that they're actually supposed to go ask somebody else to go give them work. So we have to first overcome that and make sure that's not the problem. When we find out that that's not the problem, I have to call, or I counsel the student to how to have a talk. I have an externship agreement, and at the top, the externship agreement is stuff that the student says that they need additional, and they say, I will work 120 hours, and at the bottom, it's the placement, and it's, the typical, I will provide an orientation, and I will, provide a diversity of tasks, and it's all based on the ABA standards.
But how about if they are related? Because they're stripes. So
yes.
You will tell her go to Paris, and in the end I will sign the paper that you did your
I don't let people work for their relatives.
But they are tribes.
They are. And so their dad or their uncle, it's usually dads and uncles. I don't mean to be against moms or aunts, but it's usually dads or uncles. Dads and uncles are not allowed to be the primary supervisor, and they're not allowed to be the boss. So you can't go to the Ministry of Justice if your dad is the Minister of Justice. This doesn't work. You have to go somewhere else. I also have my translator, Nanise, who's a feisty Egyptian, and I'm like, Nanise, go find out if they're related. And she goes and she calls and she finds out, and if they're related, they cannot go there. So this is Nanise. Nanise helps me police. When I find out that they're not giving work, then I have to have them first find out if it's really them not giving work, or my student doesn't know how to go get work. Then I have to counsel my student. I advise them to take the externship agreement back to the employer and to talk about it. So you promised you would provide me feedback, you promised you would, so they have a conversation, and I'm trying to get the student to be a little bit more proactive in defending herself or himself. It's usually my women. If that doesn't work, then I call, or Denise, or I have Denise call if it has to be in Arabic, and then we call, or I go over there and I go talk to him and find out what's going on. And in extreme cases, then I pull them and I put them somewhere else, even if it's mid-semester. I still count their hours, so if they've gone for 4 weeks and they've done hours, it's not their fault, so that those 4 weeks and however many hours count towards the total, but I have to find them somewhere else. Yeah, and it does happen. And I've had some places that the students, not all my students want to be lawyers. In fact, the majority of them don't want to be lawyers. The majority of them would like to be, so after you graduate from law school, you qualify, the Ministry of Justice has kind of a post-qualification thing, and there are 2 prongs. One is if you want to be a trial attorney, and you do a specific set of trainings with Ministry of Justice to become qualified to appear before court, and the other one is like a ministerial in-house type role, and you do that training. And almost all of my students want to go through the training where they go to the ministries or the in-house. So that's the bulk of my students. Very, very few want to become judges. Very, very few want to become lawyers. Very, very few want to become prosecutors. Also, prosecutors and judges in Qatar, they have, our laws are different. It's not here. They're held to a higher, there is no right to a defense counsel, so they view, and how they get around this, they view that the prosecutor is kind of supposed to always behave ethically, and so it's different. It's a little different. So they make their prosecutors and their judges have to live practically separate lives from the rest of the community. If you're a judge, you're not really even allowed to be friends with lawyers or be friends with regular people, because they view it that they're going to hit you up if they have a case and they want some kind of special treatment. So prosecutors and judges, it's a very special life that you have to lead and your family has to lead, so it's not a whole lot of people that actually want to do it. So, yes. Yeah.
So, just based on your experience in Qatar, do you have any advice for those of us in the U.S. who might have LLM students coming from the region? I mean, obviously those are students who've already made a choice to come to the U.S.
Yes.
Many of them have already visited or lived in the U.S., but are there any maybe broad comments you would make?
I would say take into consideration that they haven't been made to read as much as a law student here, and they're going to be overwhelmed because our educational system is very oral. Everything is very oral. In fact, my students don't take notes. In fact, none of our students really take notes during lectures. They watch you. So writing, it's an oral history. All of it is an oral history. I don't know how they retain it all, but they take their exams, but it's so, our schools don't make them read. Like, I remember Silvia when we were in law school, right, and you guys teach here, so it's reading 30 pages a night in just one class, No. I mean, I've given 20-page reading assignments and they've had 2 weeks to do it and I get complaints. So, and I've made it translated into Arabic, So they're not pushed to read, and that just means that when they get here, those initial few weeks are going to be a really rude awakening. Also, and but I've had students right now in LLM be aware of conflicts going on where we live right now. There's a big conflict. We're blockaded. So I have a friend who's doing a PhD. She was buddies with all of the people in her LLM program, or no, she's doing a SJD, and all of a sudden everyone stopped talking to her because she's with everyone in Saudi or UAE. So now she's completely alone out there with no friends in the States, because I thought, but you're in the States, who cares? But there are some police officers that are in her program, so now everyone's afraid. Because remember, you have an opinion on the blockade. In Bahrain, people have been arrested. In UAE, people have been arrested. So, yeah. Be careful and be cognizant that there's a big political feud, and all of us regular people, especially the students are going to be regular people, I would imagine, we are caught up in it. Because people, we're caught up in it, yeah? And until the government stops fighting, they're going through some emotional stuff. also note, Skype's not working, FaceTime's not working, Messenger's not working in Qatar. So like calling home isn't possible. I've tried 4 VPNs. I can't get out. I can't talk to my parents. So
Yeah, I have an Iranian student right now where, I mean, doesn't have that issue.
Yeah.
It's with, you know, she's in my 1L class and we were talking about, you know, some of her plans. And right, she just isn't gonna go home. She transferred from our LLM to our JD program because of course she wouldn't be able to get back in.
no.
She got
No.
here, so she's staying here.
Yeah, in
And she's hoping her parents might be able to get her for her graduation, but of course it
Right.
looks unlikely.
There's the woman, the British woman and her child that I
Yeah.
can't. You know, there's the guy, the professor from the States that just died in jail in Iran. So like, be aware that the students have a lot more going on than law school. Like,
Yeah.
there's a lot going on back home. So just know that overwhelmed and a crazy different time difference with the inability to call home and check on your loved ones is emotionally taxing. I don't know. Is there anything, I don't know. Yeah.
I mean, it just makes me think of, thank you for coming and for doing this, first of all. To even beyond that of looking, I work with I place all of our LLM students who are wanting to do externships and prepare them during the summer to help them do interviews so that by the time they come in the fall, because our LLM students can do externships in the fall when they first get there. And of just even taking out the lens and just my overall pedagogy is to think about and ask them, what are you looking for? What are things that you might anticipate are gonna be obstacles or get in your way? But then also flipping that and saying, what are some of the strengths and things that you do enjoy on like a personal level, professional level, to then include that into my counseling when I'm chatting with them, going through their very long, you know, resumes and helping them get it onto one page and
Yeah.
putting a picture up and those kinds of things. But having a conversation with them about what is it that's going on sort of with them and looking, having that holistic approach
Yeah.
with them. And that's helped, it's made a difference.
Yes. Yeah. And our legal services profession does not look like the American legal services profession. So when you need to do something, you usually have to go to the you need to look at the code, right? The same as everyone else. But what you might really more likely need to go talk to the Ministry of Business and Economics or the Ministry of Business and Trade. Because what the rules say isn't necessarily what is really reflective. So like there's everything in the States, you can Westlaw it, you can look it up, you can find the answer to all this stuff, but it's not like that where we live. So the students are also having to hunt a little bit harder and do a lot more oral communications to find out what is the proper way to advise their client to do something. It's very different, and they're shocked. Yeah. When they come to the States and see it's all different.
And I noticed that with some of my LLMs, and in my international JD students, some of them want to come and they need to see me and speak with me, whereas other ones don't want to come in, they just want to do it all by email.
Yeah.
And so, and then helping, because we have 5, our 1-unit courses that match up with our different externships, and helping those, our adjunct faculty.
Yeah.
Whether they should, you know, change some of their curriculum or switch up stuff. So we work pretty closely with our LLM office and asking for their input, like what is your suggestion of how we should move forward?
Yeah, yeah. I would imagine my students when they come to the States are braver because they're free, right? They're like, unless there are collegiates in their campus, it's not going to get back home with what they're doing. So they might be more likely to go to a law firm. They might be more likely to, you know, go to a public defender or a private, you know, a public prosecutor or do something fun because it's not going to get back home and let, you know. So I would imagine that they're braver, but not at home. Not at home. I'm trying to think of some stories. Yeah, yeah. So
is more a curiosity
Yeah.
question. I found it very interesting that they were more likely to have a supervisor in a law firm, which I sometimes would think would not be my experience in the US.
Yeah.
Is that, are those usually Qatari women, or is it British and American women?
No, we had three law firms that were licensed by the Ministry of Justice, which meant that they got special permission to actually practice law. Those are Squire Patton Boggs, who's the American, and Simmons & Simmons, who's the British. That they were invited by the Emir to set up shop, and they are treated for purposes of like a local counsel. They can actually advise on the law. There was a French one called UGC, but it closed. I mean, it didn't close in France, they just closed up in Doha. Everyone else has to come in under the Qatar Financial Center. The Qatar Financial Center is our kind of small little free zone. Nothing like Dubai with the actual real free zones, and we're little. So we are like financial services, insurance, and legal services. All other firms that want to come into Qatar, coming from abroad, need to set up shop under the QFC. When I first came, I think there were only about 7 or 8. Now I think there are about 15. It's a good, healthy mix. I guess a healthy mix. It's pretty much only Brits and the big ones, the British or the American monsters. So we've got like Denton's, Clyde & Co., Allen & Overy, the big, the ones with the money, and the millions of lawyers, or the thousands of lawyers. So that's who has enough money. And WASTA, which is kind of like, what is WASTA? WASTA's like, you have to know someone. Yeah, gumption, like, and knowing somebody in ins in the community to be able to actually make enough money and have enough clients to sustain. We've had a lot of law firms come, and then they just decided to run all their operations out of Abu Dhabi or Dubai or Bahrain, because it's just not cost effective to maintain a Doha office. And so actually we lose a lot, especially now with the blockade. A lot is just, they had 15 lawyers in Dubai, so they're just going to maintain the office in Dubai and close the one in Doha. So you do lose that. Same with companies. Just because a company's in Qatar doesn't mean that their lawyers are in Qatar. Yeah. So they could be having all the lawyers, again, usually regional, usually Abu Dhabi, Dubai, or Bahrain. Yeah? Yeah. So, yeah. So, I would say, and my Qatari female lawyers, I think I need to look up my specific numbers, but it's like we have like 12. So no, they're not. We do have a couple ladies who have gone and they've sat for New York. So Michelle El-Naimi, she is one of the first ladies. She was at Squire Patton Boggs, then she went to Exxon. She took the New York bar. I think she must have done an LLM in the States, and then she did that. She's the first, I believe. And we do have one lady who went and she did the LPC, and she's a solicitor. So we've got one solicitor. But we don't have a lot of lawyers. And actually, even the ones, what happens if you're really smart? Is the government is like, you're a really smart Qatari, I'm going to put you as this. So you don't get to be a regular person for too long before the government hand selects you and puts you in a giant, massive position of power, and you lose your private life. So, yeah. So that's kind of what happens, We do have one, I feel like Moran is the youngin, that Moran Naji, she was also, everyone kind of cycles through. So Squire Patton Boggs is like the big one because they've been out there for forever. So Squire Patton Boggs is the law firm that recovered the money from great-grandpa Amir. So everyone goes to that one. So kind of everyone does their training through that one, and then they go and they set up their own shop or they set up their own law firm. Yeah.
That's about 3 minutes, or
Yeah, I know.
if there's any questions, or.
Well, I stole all of Stephanie's time anyway, so.
Thank you.
Well, yeah.
I'm sorry.
No. You're going ahead of it.